This man's name is Jeffrey Bezos. Jeffrey is widely known for his success in his creation of a $2 trillion company from just a measly $250,000 investment made by his parents. But Jeffrey has a secret. What is not widely known about Jeffrey is that his grandfather is Lawrence P. Guise. Lawrence P. Guise helped form the Pentagon's super-secret Advanced Research Project, ARPA, in 1958. In later years, that agency was renamed to DARPA. DARPA is responsible for the development of the Internet and spurred breakthroughs in high-speed networking, voice recognition, and Internet searches. And then coincidentally, what one can only perceive as a passing of the torch ritual, 1 year before Lawrence P. Guise unalived in 1995, Bezos founded Amazon in the garage of his Bellevue, Washington home. They know that we root for the underdog, so they prey on our weakness.
Once you begin to see how words and terms and symbols are used, and the powers that be in this world have set up a world of symbols and emblems and terms and catchphrases. Once you understand how this system works, for the first time, the world opens up to you. All of it is right in front of you. But if you don't understand what the words are and what the words mean, you're never going to figure out how this stuff works. There's a very sinister, frightening, interesting symbolism that has been imposed upon this country, and the people have no idea in the world what's going on. And I will guarantee you, no matter how educated you might think you are, I will guarantee you, you have no idea in the world how the world actually works. You need to understand that when even on your check, when you're writing a check, the place where you put your name on a check, look at that line, what you're signing on, and get a magnifying glass, and you will find that's not a solid line to sign your name on. That is written, it's a typewritten sentence that's been honed down to microscopic size. Get a magnifying glass and read on a check what is said where you sign your name. I have discovered many years ago that words and magical systems dominate the world that we live in. There is, in point of fact, a magical matrix at work. I've always been interested in the occult. Occult is simply a word meaning hidden, and so much of our powers in this world and the way things work are hidden. And the more one looks at this subject of how the world actually works, you begin to see that there's a magical system. And I'm telling you, there really is a magical system dominating the world of the Western civilization. And for 1,000 years before the Roman Empire existed in Northern Europe, basically Western Europe, there was a magical priesthood called the Druids. And the Druids still even exist to this day. And it was a very legitimate political, social, educational, religious institution dominating Europe for thousands of years. And they were referred to as the Druids. They were actually from the Phoenician Canaanite system in the Middle East. The Phoenician Canaanites formed the basis for the ancient Druidic system, and that's even older. But in the ancient Druidic system, there were many powerful symbols and emblems. One of the most interesting symbols in Druidism was a magic wand, like Merlin the magician with his magic wand. Magic wands were always made out of the wood of a holly tree. It was made out of hollywood. And we're still seeing the magic of the wood of the holly tree. Hollywood, motion pictures, television. And once you begin to see the symbols and realize that the symbols for the national coats of arms for countries, the flags, the seals, the presidential seals, the emblems for the logos and emblems on corporations, especially the corporate emblems for motion pictures and television companies like Columbia Broadcasting System. CBS has the eye. The Colombian system goes back to the Colombian faction of the Illuminati back in the early 1700s, not the late 1700s. And you begin to see why space shuttle is called Columbia. You have Columbia University, Columbia Pictures, Columbia Broadcasting. Columbia is a very interesting word, and it's connected to the Jesuits. Once you begin to see how words and terms and symbols are used, and of course symbols are extraordinarily important in world affairs, all of a sudden it opens up, as I said, a whole new perspective on how stuff is happening. Let me give you an example of how words, my friend William Henry says you put an S in front of the word word and it becomes swords. The words are swords. They are cutting things. Humans are word responsive creatures. We respond to people's words. When you begin to see how words are used, let me give you an example of the magic. Why do you have to go to court? You go to court because you play basketball on a court. You play tennis on a court. How do you play tennis on a court? You play with a racket. Why? Because the people that develop it know it's a racket. That's where we get the term. Consequently, you need to understand that the words which are used by the systems under which we live are not by chance. In a court, the whole idea in a court is to put the ball back in the other guy's court. So this team of attorneys, they stand up and throw the ball back at the other team. Now the ball's in their court. They have to get up and throw the ball back into that court. The judge wears a black robe. Why does a judge wear a black robe? Well, the same reason Catholic priests wear black robes. Rabbis wear black robes. You wear a black robe. For many years, young people graduating from university and college wear a black robe. What's this stuff with a black robe? Let me give you an example of how this stuff works, and it's a very quick example. There are two basic kinds of law under the law of magic. There are two kinds of laws that govern the earth. One is called the law of the land, L-A-N-D. And we've heard that term, law of the land. Why do you use that term, the law of the land? Because that's where people live, is on land. But there's an opposing law which is far more important, far, far more powerful. It is called the law of water. It was developed under the old Druidic system in Europe, which can trace its history back through the Roman Empire, through the Vatican, and ultimately back to the Phoenician Canaanites in the Middle East, of what we today call Phoenicia. Cana was called back what we call today Israel and Lebanon. Syria, that was called Phoenicia, Cana. And the Phoenician Canaanites, the very word Cana, which we've all heard in relation to the Bible, Cana is a Phoenician word meaning bankers, merchant bankers. Well, the Phoenician Canaanites set up a system of merchant banking and had their Phoenician Canaanite symbols and words connected to their societies, their banking societies. We're talking about in the Middle East. And then through the Greece, and ultimately through Rome, and then into Britannia, and ultimately into this country comes an ancient Druidic Phoenician Canaanite magical system of finance, education, and all of it is right in front of you. But if you don't understand what the words are and what the words mean, you're never going to figure out how this stuff works. We all have a cursory understanding of what we think is going on. That's not it. You need to understand that when even on your check, when you're writing a check, the place where you put your name on a check, look at that line, what you're signing on, and get a magnifying glass, and you will find that's not a solid line to sign your name on. That is written. It's a typed written sentence that's been honed down to microscopic size. Get a magnifying glass and read on a check what is said where you sign your name. That's why the attorneys tell you, you better check the small print. The small print is ultra small. Where you sign your name on a check is saying something. Go back and read it. You need to understand that according to the old Phoenician Canaanite system, which we call today our educational and judicial system, there is no law in this country or in the Western world no law, federal, state, county, city, commercial, it makes no difference. There is no law on the books anywhere in this country that applies to you as an individual creature. There is no law, because the people who designed the system thousands of years ago realized that there's two of you. There's the one that your mother gave birth to, that God created, so to speak, and even your mother didn't know what you were doing. Even your father and your mother have no idea what you're thinking or what you will do. You don't even know. So consequently, they have no control over you, your flesh and blood self. But somebody has to control this show, and so consequently, the ancient Phoenician Canaanites developed a system by which they would assign to every person a second you. And this is the way it works in America. There is two of you. Just as there are two states in this country, of every state is two states. You have the state of Nevada and Nevada State. You have Cal State, California State, and State of California. Not the same thing at all. California State, according to the law, is one thing. State of California is totally different. Has nothing to do with each other at all. It's the difference between being a lawyer and an attorney. Has nothing to do with them at all. It's totally separate words, means totally separate things. Consequently, when you understand how words and terms are used and symbols are used, then we go back to the idea of the court. And as I said, there is no law in this country on any books that applies to you. None. All law in the Western civilization applies only to cooperations, co-ops. All law applies only to corporations, period. Across the board. No other, end of sentence. Consequently, there is no law that applies to you personally, so consequently, the system has made each one of you a corporation. And how now do you distinguish which one, when someone's addressing you, that they're addressing you as the one that your mother gave birth to, or the corporate you? Very simple. According to British law, when you sign your name, upper and lower case, that is applying to your body. Your flesh and blood self is spelled, according to British and American law, upper and lower case, capital letter, lower case. That's you, your personal self. There is no law that can be applied to an upper and lower case name, period. No law at all can be applied to an upper and lower case name, because there is no law over you. Therefore, every piece of important bills, insurance, driver's license, identification, taxes, I don't care what it is. If it's a piece of business, period, in any kind of way, shape, or form, your name must, by law, international maritime admiralty banking law, your name must appear in all capital letters. You will never get a bill or anything that has your name upper and lower case, because there is no law that applies to an upper and lower case name, period. So if Sears is going to send you a bill, if you go into Baskin Robbins or Sears and you order a pair of shoes, what are you going to do? They're going to give you a ticket, and you're going to put it on your bill, and then they're expecting you to pay the bill. And consequently, they're going to charge you. Well, that's the same thing. You go into a courtroom. They're going to read out the charges. And the cop gave you the ticket, and you have been charged with speeding or whatever. And therefore, you have to pay the charge. Well, once you understand that in America, according to our laws in America, you cannot pay a bill. Did you know that? According to international banking law, Americans cannot pay a bill. So when you say, well, I got to pay this, I'll pay that bill, well, that's a term that we use, but in point of fact, lawfully, you cannot pay a bill. You can discharge a debt. You cannot pay a bill. So consequently, you need to understand, what do you mean discharge a debt? Now it gets back to the court again. Now it gets back to the symbols and emblems of why the judge wears a black robe. It has to do with the planet Saturn. Saturn is the god that inhibits. He's the inhibitor and the law god, the god of law who inhibits, who holds back. He holds back everything and teaches you a lesson the hard way. Saturn. And women were told in the ancient world to listen to their god Saturn, who incidentally was called Lord of the Rings. Okay? And consequently, they're still making movies in Hollywood on Lord of the Rings, the planet Saturn. Women were told to listen to their god, the Lord of the Rings, so they were wearing an ear ring. Men were to get married before Saturn, their god, so they would wear a wedding ring. Consequently, the king would be crowned before Saturn. Saturn would be the round crown, or the corona, the ring. Saturn, the god who is the inhibitor, the god of occult law, the mystical god Saturn, Lord of the Rings, who is in charge of and controls all occult law in the universe. This is why today we know that Saturn was referred to as El, E-L. El is a name that was given to the planet Saturn. And therefore, if you are worshiping Saturn, you represent the law, you are referred to in church today as an elder. How did you get to be an elder? You got to be an elder because you were one of the elites. How did you get to be an elite? You got elected. Because through elections, all of our system is based on occult, mystical words and terms going back to the planet Saturn, going back to the Phoenician Canaanite system of banking. Incidentally, where do you find a bank? We go to banks all the time. Where do you find a bank? Banks are on both sides of a river. They're called river banks. What does a river bank do? It directs the flow of the currency. Your money is referred to as the currency. This is why when you go to court, you have the current, electricity, because it's the juice. And if you don't have the juice, you don't have it. So if you don't have the juice, you can't capitalize. And the capital is a Latin word meaning money. There's a very sinister, frightening, interesting symbolism that has been imposed upon this country, and the people have no idea in the world what's going on. All goes back to the Phoenician Canaanite system and ancient Phoenicia, ancient Babylonian Sumeria, and this is why the work of Zechariah Sitchin is so important. This is where the kings of England get their concept of the divine right of kings. What are you talking about, divine right? All of this is part of a subject which I call ancient mysticism that dominates the Western civilization. After the change of the century, coming into 1900s, decided they wanted to expand. They got so much money and they're doing so well. They thought maybe we could expand the business, move the corporation out a little bit. Let's expand business. Let's go to Germany or Europe and open up a big corporation there and take in their corporation, their government. We'll take them over. And the Germans said, "Hey, Jack, it's like a mafia. What are you coming over here? You're gonna buy me? I'll buy you. You don't buy me." Like the Godfather movie. And the American corporation, British American corporation, said, "Unfortunately, maybe you didn't understand. Let me restate it so you understand. I didn't ask you. I'm telling you. We're moving in here. It's called a corporate takeover." And so there was a hostile corporate takeover where the American corporation decided they want to go take over in Europe, and they didn't want to be taken over. Well, it's too bad. They take over anyway. So they called it a hostile corporate takeover. We call it World War I. So the corporation called United States was able to overthrow the existing corporate order in Europe, but it cost a lot of money. They had to build a lot of tanks and jeeps and pay a lot of people. And the corporation, well, they were successful. They did what they wanted to do. But they went broke doing it. And so when they went broke doing it, and then the bankers pulled their money out in 29, We had something called a stock market crash because the corporation spent so much money they went broke. So the international banker says, well, if you're broke, what are you coming to me for? I'm not going to loan you money if you're broke. And so what do you have as collateral? You got any collateral that you can put up for me to loan you the money? And the corporation called United States, the British corporation called United States, said, yes, we have the stock. We'll give you stock in the company. You are the stock in the corporation. So they give your body to the banks in Switzerland. So your body now becomes stock for the corporation called United States because you are a money maker. Bankers came in and said, if we're going to loan you money, you guys have lost money, you guys have gone bankrupt, we're going to take care of the accounting. We're going to see where the money goes. We'll give you the money, but we're going to make it sure it goes where we want it to go. So they set up the Federal Reserve System and then the collection agency to make damn sure that you people pay us. We're going to set up to keep a record of how much you owe us in business each week. We're going to call that the Federal Reserve. And to make sure that your stock, all the chumps out there in America working, make sure the stock pays us. We're going to make sure they pay us. You don't just tell me you're going to pay. I'm going to make sure they're going to pay. So we will set up a collection agency. Our own personal collection agency is called the Internal Revenue. So the banks, the corporation called United States, loan money to the privately owned corporation called United States. And the United States Corporation gave your body, your birth certificate, to the banks as collateral for the loan. And that's why today Americans are nothing but slaves. Now this is something I want you to understand. And you need to listen carefully because this is profoundly important. Most people have never heard this and don't even understand what I'm trying to say. So try and follow what I'm going to tell you. There are two kinds of law on the earth, as I've said. One is called civil law, which is the law of the land, and one is called maritime admiralty, which is called the law of water. Maritime admiralty is banking law. And the law on the maritime admiralty says that you, because you came out of your mother's water, are a maritime admiralty product. This is why the ship is sitting in its berth and is tied to the dock, and the captain has to give a certificate of manifest to the port authorities because money is changing hands. This is why when you were born, you have to have a birth certificate. And it's got to be signed by the dock because that's where the ship is tied to, is the dock. So the dock signs your birth certificate. Why? Because you came down out of your mother's water. You came down her birth canal. You are a maritime admiralty product, and therefore your birth certificate is signed by your mother. And where your mother signed on the birth certificate, get it, you will see it does not say parent or mother, it says informant. Your mother was informing the bank that she has just produced another product to be bought and sold. England, the British Crown, through international banking, owns your physical body. And that's the law. You can think it's funny all you want. So the bottom line is that you are a maritime admiralty product. And on the back of the Social Security card will be numbers in red. On the front will be in blue or black, but on the back will be in red. The numbers on the back of a Social Security card in red designate your body. It is the serial number of your stock. And this is why if you're wealthy, you are preferred stock. If you're poor, you are common stock. But you are a stock on the stock market. Your body is bought and sold through the use of your birth certificate. And if you could get your original birth certificate back, you would find that on the back of the birth certificate are all the banks around the world. All over the world, banks have used your birth certificate because you are a stock in a maritime admiralty banking scheme where you make money for banks. So consequently, the corporation and government and people who want to control you, they create a second you, and that second you that they control, that they created, is all capital letters. Check it out. Anytime you get a bill, get a lawsuit, you get a fine, a ticket, somebody sends you a bill from the Department of Water and Power, check it out on your driver's license, on your Social Security card, on your insurance cards, anything having to do with business, your name will always be in all capital letters, because only all capital letters can be dealt with by banks and government. Anytime you have a name upper or lowercase, that applies to you. I got no control over you. You sign a contract in which your name is in all capital letters, now I can take you to court. Now I can take you. As a matter of fact, the judge sits on the bench. He rules from the bench. The word bench in Latin is a bank. Look it up in a Latin dictionary. So the judge rules from the bench. Right, because he's ruling for the bank. Why? Because somebody's going to pay. It's just a game here. The Queen of England wants a cut of the American blood. She wants a piece. So it's somebody's going to pay, and the money's going to go where? Into a bank. That's right. The judge rules for the bank. So consequently, if you are working in California making money, you are then referred to as a franchisee. You're a franchisee of a foreign corporation. 1849 Constitution of California says, no California citizen will ever pay taxes in California state. Ever. There will never be a state tax in California. Ever. That's the Constitution of California. But if you say that you're a United States citizen, you're saying you work for a privately owned corporation called United States. Therefore, you are a franchisee of a foreign corporation. Therefore, you must pay the California Franchise Tax Board, not California State Tax Board. There is no state tax in California. You pay the California Franchise Tax Board because you're a franchisee of a foreign corporation on the maritime banking law, international law. You work for the Queen of England. Your butt is owned by the Queen of England and a corporation called United States, while a man called Bush is the president of the British corporation. You need to wake up and find out how this stuff really works. Because once you understand that you don't need to submit yourself as an American to a British commercial venture called courts. You're an American. You don't need to go to court. You only go to court because you agreed to go to court. When they send you a subpoena to court or summons to court, or they've sent you something, you look at it and say, hey, Jack, that's not me. That's in all capital letters. All capital letters is a corporation. It's a corpse. It's dead. Do I look like I'm dead to you? No, I'm an American, Jack. I ain't dead. And besides, I'll go to an American system for justice. I don't need no British Grand Lodge Masonic system called courts. This British Grand Lodge Freemasonic system called Inns of Court comes out of England. And it has manipulated, exploited, and lied to the people. And everybody in America thinks they got to go to court. Oh, the judge is, they've sent me something that I've got to go to court. I don't go to anybody's court. I'm an American. I don't need to go to court. That's the difference between being a free man and a slave.